Okay, The Walking Dead, Grave New World. This is episode 6 of season 9, and oddly enough, it's a mid-season reboot. The timeline has jumped 6 years since Rick Grimes was presumed dead. We all know that Rick isn't dead, however, he's going to appear in at least 3 AMC movies. But his time as a character on the show itself is over. Andrew Lincoln will not be back on The Walking Dead, having decided that he's done with the grueling schedule and wanting to spend more time with his family. That's actually pretty reasonable. He gave the show 9 years. Okay, so I think that this is probably the only way the new showrunner could have gone about it. Rick Grimes uh, has obviously been the protagonist since the very beginning, and so to suddenly remove him midstream, something big has to happen if the story is to continue. So we find that Rick's dream is only partially alive. Alexandria is still standing, and so are the other communities, the Kingdom and the Hilltop. But it seems they're pretty much estranged from each other at this point. Um, Not enemies per se, but just not a sort of larger interlocking community the way Rick had envisioned it. The saviors have fallen apart. Things are rough for the kingdom because all of their equipment is years old now, and they're basically holding it all together with duct tape. And we don't really know what's going on with the Hilltop because it wasn't really featured this episode. But suffice it to say, the Hilltop is going to be without Maggie because the actress who played Maggie is gone. Michonne is now a mom to two children, Little Ass Kicker and RJ, which is Rick's son. If you recall, they were talking about potentially getting pregnant before Rick died. And Gabriel and Rosita have become a couple of all things. Who saw that shit coming? And Eugene has finally found his courage, is now a badass and can kill walkers, no longer dependent on someone stronger to take care of him. So a lot has shifted and a lot has changed. Michonne, who's on the council, is head of security, and she takes that job very, very seriously. And it seems Alexandria has become very insular in that they don't want to let in new people. And just want to take care of each other. They're not trusting, which kind of makes sense because they probably view that as Rick's downfall, right? Rick tried to rehabilitate the saviors and died for it. Um, and Michonne is still heavily mourning. She talks to Rick even though he's not there, and her heart breaks for him. She aches for him. She misses him. It's one loss that she simply cannot seem to get over, even though she is nurturing both RJ and Judith. The pain of her loss is everywhere. Yeah. So there's that. And then we have Carol, who sort of settled into married life with Ezekiel, and she's the queen, right? Henry has become a son to her, and that's exactly how she views him. Daryl is living on the fringes of society on his own. He has no company. He fishes, he kills walkers, and that's about it. Zero contact. He's sort of become a hermit. Um, so everyone has changed since Rick has gone. Now, this storyline involves Judith um, encouraging a few Alexandrians to let Magna's group come back when she finds them running from walkers. Uh, Michonne is dead fast against them becoming part of the community. It doesn't help that Magna hid a prison tattoo and a knife after claiming to be disarmed. It just shows how not only how distressful was shown is of strangers, but the fact that she had forgotten what her group was like when they originally arrived at Alexandria. By her own standards, she and Rick would not have been allowed in, especially given that Rick was frantic, he was distrustful, he was angry, um, he was aggressive. He didn't want to accept the safety that they had and was already making plans to take over the community and make it theirs and all kinds of shit. She seems to have forgotten that she, was staring sort of into a ghost of herself and Rick in Magna's eyes. Judith has made really good friends with Negan. Um, and we got our first introduction to the Whispers. I won't say too much in case some of you haven't read the comics. I like this episode. I think it worked as a reboot very well. It situated all of the major characters. It gave us all of their motivation for their actions. It divided storylines. And best of all, Carol got to be Carol. And by that I mean we got to see Carol be cold and murderous again. And it's been a while since we've seen her in that mode. And this time she was inspired to do so to get vengeance for the surviving saviors hurting Henry. You know, I loved when they knocked Henry down and Carol, sort of threw her body over top of Henry's to protect him. And she looked up at that savior. We just knew. We just knew something bad was coming. And, sure enough, the writers did not disappoint. I like this version of Carol. It's always been my favorite version of Carol. Carol is deadly. Carol is someone you don't cross. Carol is someone you cross the street to avoid. Because if Carol decides that she's taking you out, you are freaking done. And we have not seen this Carol for a really long time. And this is part of what makes Carol one of my favorite characters on the show, is just how deadly and uncompromising she is. When the Savior's like, "Oh, you'll never see me again," and Carol says, "I know," um, before tossing that lit match, it was like, holy shit. So for me, that is absolutely the highlight, and it sort of broke up some of the sadness that we saw in Alexandria, some of the mourning, you know. Um, and we'll see where this goes. Carol, of course, travels to meet with Daryl. Um, after taking out the last of the saviors. So we'll see where that's going. Wonder if Carol is taking Daryl to the hilltop, hoping that she can redeem him and Henry at the same time. I guess we're gonna see. Anyway, not only are Carol and Henry, potentially Daryl, headed to the hilltop, so are Michonne and Magna's new group. I think it's interesting that one member of Magna's group is deaf. We got to see some sign language. Um, Other than Aaron, who's lost his arm, this is our first real disabled character. So it'll be interesting to see what The Walking Dead does with that. The writers have split up things, right? So it was Rick Grimes in the comic who lost his arm. This time we have Aaron. It was the role that Henry is playing is what happened to Carl in the comics, right? So I think they're going to disperse everything that Carl and Rick would have done evenly among the characters. And I kind of like that. I mean, it's good for us comic readers, because even though we know what's coming a little bit, we don't know what's coming and for whom. It could land on anybody, right? What happened to Rick and Carl could conceivably land on any of the characters. And this adds a little bit of freshness to the show. I think The Walking Dead actually needed it. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I think The Walking Dead actually did need to kill off Rick Grimes. It really did. This is the freshest it has been in a while. Um, so while I'm sad to see Andrew Lincoln go, um, I think it will serve the story better now that he's gone.